Perhaps we will do. On Friday, July 7th, the U.S. Department of Homeland Security announced the implementation of new family reunification parole processes for Colombia, El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras. The new process, which formally started July 10th, it is for nationals from Colombia, El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras, whose family members are United States citizens or lawful permanent residents and who have an approved I-130 visa petition filed by a United States citizen or LPR, lawful permanent resident family member. Qualifying beneficiaries must be outside the United States, meet all requirements, including screening and vetting and medical requirements, and must not have already received an immigrant visa. So basically, if you have a family member that you filed for, and that family member is a citizen of Colombia, El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras, after their I-130 visa petition is approved, they will be allowed to come to the United States on a parole to work and live here while waiting out their green card. The process begins with the Department of State issuing an invitation to the petitioning U.S. citizen or lawful permanent resident family member whose Form I-130 on behalf of the Colombian citizen, the El Salvadoran citizen, the Guatemalan citizen, or the Honduran citizen has been approved. The invited petitioner can then initiate the process by filing a request on behalf of their family member and the other eligible family members that are derivative, their children, spouses, etc., to be considered for advanced travel authorization and parole into the United States. And this new process allows for parole only on a discretionary case-by-case and temporary basis upon a demonstration of urgent humanitarian reasons or significant public benefit, as well as a demonstration that the beneficiary warrants a favorable exercise of discretion. Individuals paroled into the United States under these processes will generally be considered for parole for up to 3 years and will be eligible to request employment authorization, as I previously mentioned, while they wait for their immigrant visas to become available. And if their immigrant visas are not available after that 3-year period, I am sure that they will be able to extend it indefinitely until that visa petition becomes current. On June 28th, the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services launched a new self-service tool allowing benefit requesters and their attorneys and accredited representatives to reschedule biometric service appointments before the date of the appointment. So you have a biometric appointment, you can't make it, you can now go online to make a new appointment. You don't have to call USCIS anymore and be on hold with an operator and go through a whole story. It's so much easier now. I wish they did this years ago. Welcome to the 21st century, USCIS. USCIS Director M. Jadoo said, "We are working steadily to improve the customer experience by designing and delivering services in a manner that people of all abilities can access." I wouldn't say you're working steadily. I'd say you're working slowly, but better late than never. This should have been done years ago, but at least now you can reschedule a simple biometric appointment by going online. As I said previously, benefit requests and accredited representatives could only request to reschedule a biometric service by calling the USCIS contact center. So now with this new tool, those individuals who have or create a USCIS online account can reschedule most requests for biometric service appointments without having to call USCIS. The U.S. Supreme Court overturns its own 2003 decision in Grutter versus Bollinger. It hasn't been more than 20 years, exactly 20 years, and they completely overruled their prior decision from 20 years earlier. And what did they overrule? They overruled that affirmative action in college admissions is legal and now bars all universities from considering race in admission decisions. The court ruled that affirmative action programs at the University of North Carolina and Harvard University violate the Equal Protection Clause of the Constitution and are therefore unlawful. The vote was 6-3 in the UNC case and 6-2 in the Harvard case, in which liberal Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson was recused. Now, it was basically liberals on one side and the conservatives that Donald Trump put into place on the other side. The decision was hailed by prominent conservatives who say the Constitution should be colorblind. Donald Trump called it a great day for America. Liberals, however, condemned the ruling, saying affirmative action is a key tool for remedying historic race discrimination. Michelle Obama, the first Black First Lady, said it wasn't perfect, but there's no doubt that it helped offer new ladders of opportunity for those who, throughout our history, have too often been denied a chance to show how fast they can climb. President Joe Biden called the decision a severe disappointment, adding that his administration would provide guidance about how colleges could maintain diversity without violating the new U.S. Supreme Court ruling. The court effectively overturned a 2003 ruling in Grutter versus Bollinger. That ruling said 20 years ago, it wasn't like 150 years ago, this is 20 years ago, in which it said race could be considered as a factor in the admissions process because universities had a compelling interest in maintaining a diverse campus. In doing so, the court scrapped decades of precedent, including a ruling dating to 1978 that upheld a limited consideration of race in university admissions to combat historic discrimination against Black people and other minority groups. When I first went to law school, one of the first things we learned in law school was the theory of stare decisis, that precedent matters, that once a decision has been made by a judge, that is the decision for eternity. You don't have to keep going back and arguing the same thing over and over again. And here we are 20 years after a Supreme Court, previous generation of a Supreme Court 20 years ago, said that affirmative action has a role in our society to maintain a diverse campus. They say, nope, it's illegal. Murad Awade, executive director of the New York Immigration Coalition, wrote in a statement, denying colleges the right to create intentionally diverse student bodies will be a detriment not only to the students who will be denied a real opportunity to enroll at their colleges of choice, but also to the many students who will lose out on the shared experience of navigating cultural and racial differences in an increasingly connected world. The ultimate impact of today's decision won't just hurt students of color, but will also reverberate with disastrous consequences throughout our entire society. It's going to hurt everybody, because part of going to school is learning to deal with the world. And the world is not one color, and the world is not one religion, but the world is multiple religions and multiple colors and multiple people from different backgrounds and cultures. And it's a learning experience to be able to learn from each other and also deal with each other. And we're going to lose that here in the United States, in my opinion. The Supreme Court ruling has now made it even more difficult for international students to be admitted to U.S. colleges and universities. Affirmative action policies have historically played a role in fostering diversity on campuses, and without them, the student body may become more homogenous. International students, who tend to bring unique perspectives and experiences, may find it increasingly challenging to secure admission as competition intensifies. The ruling may also impact financial aid opportunities for international students. Affirmative action policies have been instrumental in promoting diversity and inclusivity, ensuring that students from marginalized backgrounds have access to financial aid programs. A potential shift away from these policies could limit the availability of financial resources. And affirmative action has historically provided a pathway for first-generation immigrant students to overcome systemic barriers and gain admission to the most esteemed educational institutions. By considering an applicant's background and experiences, these policies have sought to create opportunities for historically disadvantaged groups. And that's really the biggest takeaway, in my opinion, because where affirmative action helps the most is at the most selective universities in the United States, the top 50 universities. After that, I think, you get past 100 of the top 150 universities, almost anyone, they're happy to take anybody at that point. So I think most people can get into most people can get into most universities, but it's at the selective top, the Ivy Leagues and the tier right below the Ivy Leagues, that's going to really hurt people from minority groups. The curtailment of affirmative action policies also is going to hinder first-generation immigrant students' ability to access higher education. These students often face unique challenges such as language barriers and limited financial resources. And without the support provided by affirmative action, the already difficult path to higher education may become even more arduous for those individuals. And affirmative action policies have been instrumental in creating a more representative and diverse student body, fostering an environment where students from various backgrounds can thrive and learn from one another's experiences, as I discussed. Hopefully, higher education institutions will explore alternative approaches and initiatives to ensure that access to higher education remains equitable and diverse. In Florida, SB 718 went into effect on Saturday, July 1st, a little under 2 months after Governor Ron DeSantis signed it. In that time, videos of empty agricultural fields and protesting truck drivers have filled social media. Stories of immigrant and mixed status families leaving the state have spread across news media, and demonstrations and town halls have been held to call attention to the impact this law is having and will continue to have on the state's agricultural, construction, hospitality, retail, and various administrative industries. Together, these economies contribute about a quarter of the state's gross domestic product and depend on almost 400,000 undocumented workers to function. DeSantis was the primary sponsor of the legislation, which, in its most extreme preliminary form, proposed much more aggressive punishments for those who housed undocumented immigrants, transported them around the state, and employed them. It builds on DeSantis's growing anti-immigrant persona and policy platform to show what the Republican Party's ideal immigration policy really would look like. But even some Republican state lawmakers who in early June appeared to try to backpedal on voting for the legislation have admitted that a main point of the law is to spark panic. At a meeting hosted by Hispanic pastors in Hialeah, State Representative Alina Garcia, who is a Republican, told an assembly that this is a bill basically to scare people from coming to the state of Florida. And I think it's done its purpose. And I think it's done its purpose too. People are scared. People call me on the phone all the time. And I'll tell you, the state may be able to fine U.S. workers, but you as an immigrant, you don't have to worry about Ron DeSantis deporting you because the governor has no authority to deport you. Only Joe Biden has authority to deport you. So they can pick you up as an undocumented immigrant. They can't charge you with a crime as being an undocumented immigrant. And if they call Department of Homeland Security to get you, probably they wouldn't. It's my opinion. But still going to have far-reaching effects in all of Florida. It's because this law is very, very, very wide-ranging. The bulk of it deals with how employers with 25 or more employees use E-Verify to hire new workers. So E-Verify, that's the federal system used to confirm whether employees are permitted to work in the U.S. And it's been around for a while, but it's not usually enforced. So this law imposes financial penalties to employers. Business owners would be fined $1,000 a day for each undocumented person hired when not permitted. And the state could suspend an employer's business license if they're caught. So it's big business. Any employer with over 25 people, that's going to be a problem. The law also enhances human trafficking and smuggling penalties to make those second-degree felonies punishable by a $10,000 fine and years in prison. And it invalidates driver's licenses issued to undocumented immigrants from other states. And there's 19 states and Washington, D.C. that offer these kind of licenses. And it cuts funding to in-state organizations, jurisdictions, or groups that issue their own forms of ID to undocumented immigrants. And SB 1718 also contains provisions for Florida hospitals that accept Medicaid to collect the legal status of patients, calculate the cost of health care for people lacking legal status, and report those to the state. Jessica Ramirez, who works with the Farm Workers Association of Florida, Labor and Immigrants' Right organization, told Vox they spent the last month talking directly to farm and construction workers, shooting down rumors of what exactly the law does and doesn't do, and dispelling some of the misinformation. Ramirez said there were rumors that if you were undocumented and tried to withdraw money from the bank, you wouldn't be able to do it anymore. We heard that from some people who were worried that they would be deported if they went to the hospital. All of this is false. But she said they are urging people, if they go to a hospital and I ask a question about their citizenship on a form, simply not to answer it. And since the law was signed and its specifics became more widely known, some truck drivers have boycotted the state, and protests have disrupted its agricultural and construction industries. The goal of these movements is similar: to show the financial effects the new law will have on the state's economy, Ramirez says she's also fielding requests from Florida's business community, regular citizens, people who rely on immigrant labor. Ramirez said they have also seen children, teenagers with anxiety and fear and depression because they're scared of the law, worried about being separated from their parents or another family member. And Ramirez and others also see a political side effect of this new age in Florida. Many of those fearful mixed status families have been in Florida for 20 or 30 years, enough time for American-born children to have reached voting age. Ramirez says, I think that people will understand that if we don't change political leadership, those in power are going to continue to treat us like this, and will continue to use people for their own ends. The Washington Post published an article earlier this year titled, The States Where You're Most and Least Likely to Marry a Local. It includes fascinating data about not only interstate, but also international marriages in the United States. Here are some of the numbers. 12.4% of Americans marry someone from another country. That's up from 6.3% in 1980. We last reached those heights nearly in 1900 when 12.1% of Americans married someone from another country. About a fifth of international marriages involve a partner from Mexico. Germany, the Philippines, Canada, and the UK also supply a significant number of American spouses. Mexican marriages dominate most of the Western United States. Canadian marriages, unsurprisingly, dominate the northern border: Montana, North Dakota, Minnesota, Michigan, New Hampshire, Vermont, and Massachusetts. In Alaska, by contrast, German marriages dominate. That's not too surprising when you think about it. Alaska is a military country, and we've got bases in Germany. So these statistics mean that more and more people in the United States will be applying for green cards through marriage. And in order to qualify for a green card through marriage, you and your spouse will need to pass an immigration marriage interview to prove the union is real or bona fide. This often results in a Stokes interview when the couple is separated by an immigration officer and asked questions about their marriage to see if their answers match up. I will always tell people that it's important for a couple to study and prepare for the Stokes interview because it can be difficult for even the most in love of couples to pass. U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services celebrated Independence Day, July 4th this year, by welcoming more than 5,500 new citizens and more than 180 naturalization ceremonies between June 30th and July 7th. USCIS said in a statement that these ceremonies demonstrate the agency's commitment to welcoming immigrants and promoting the benefits of U.S. citizenship for all who are eligible. In 2022, USCIS welcomed 974,000 new United States citizens. And so far in 2023, USCIS has welcomed 588,900 new U.S. citizens through June 7th. So if that continues, they're going to make more than 1 million new U.S. citizens this year. Every July 4th, we celebrate the day the Second Continental Congress adopted the Declaration of Independence in 1776, declaring that the 13 American colonies regarded themselves as a new nation, the United States of America, and are no longer part of the British Empire. USCIS Director M. Jadoo said, promoting citizenship and making the naturalization process accessible to all who are eligible is a beautiful extension of many ideals that birthed our nation 247 years ago. This holiday is always a special opportunity to reaffirm our commitment to the USCIS mission and to welcome new citizens as they begin their American journey. This summer, USCIS is highlighting the importance of civics and citizenship with a series of events. Civic season began with a special ceremony on World Refugee Day and will end with the fiscal year 2023 Citizenship and Integration Grants Awards announcements. Congratulations to all of the new U.S. citizens, all 588,000 of you this year, and the ones that are going to come up towards the end of the year, more than 1 million. Thanks for watching. For more Brad Show Live, like and subscribe to our YouTube channel.